Welcome to all to our next session of paper presentation. 8 participants have submitted their abstract on the theme legal intervention in conjugal life. Among them, 5 papers will be presented.
Namaskar, myself Dr. Abhijit Sutradhar, Assistant Professor of Political Science from Islampur College. I am presenting a paper entitled Pumping and Leaks in the Pink Balloon, Issues of Feminist Development in India. The objective of my paper is twofold. One is to explore the recent feminist developments in India, and secondly, to highlight the limitations of Indian feminist movements. Online journalism, historical analysis, and comparative analysis, these methodological tools have been employed for the development of this paper. We all know that feminist movements emerged throughout the world as a reaction against the male domination in society and age-old injustice done to the women. In the age of globalization and ideological plurality, feminist movements mostly prioritize radicalism, particularly in matters of anti-rape movement, movement for sexual rights, movement for political equality, etc. And few successes of Indian feminist movements cannot be denied. But the consequences of these movements were not always in favor of the women of contemporary India. Now just see the scene one. We find a lack of solidarity in feminist movements to resolve protracted court proceedings on rape cases or sex crimes. Most importantly, death sentence was executed against Nirbhaya's rapists to deliver justice to India's daughter, but still the reports on gang rape are coming and the rate of such crime against women is increasing day by day. Hathras gang rape incident is a remarkable example. Therefore, we find no revolutionary impact on society to control the human behavior. Now let's see, a total of 78 women have got their seats in Lok Sabha by 17th parliamentary election. It is 14% of the total seat, and this is the highest since independence. By this, we cannot assume that what would be the time limit in future to be equal to men in the parliament. Surprisingly, women's reservation bill, which proposes 33% reservation for women, this bill is still pending in Lok Sabha, but notably, Rajya Sabha has passed the bill on 9th March 2010. According to a Supreme Court's verdict, which came on February 2020, the women are now allowed to serve Indian Army as commander. Women will have permanent commission and command roles in Indian military units, but it was decided excluding few combat units like infantry or artillery corps. But it is also important to note that Flight Lieutenant Shivangi Singh is going to be the first Indian women fighter pilot to fly Rafale combat aircraft. On September 2018, Indian Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality, and with this, Supreme Court considered Section 377 of Indian Penal Code as unconstitutional. But it is observed that the political lesbianism has failed to convince the state institution to legalize the same-sex marriage in the country. Now just see, through TV serials and Indian cinema, many of the Indian actresses have gained popularity and public support. And to uphold the Indian culture and tradition, outstanding performances of Indian actresses have been projected by TV serials and Indian cinema. But in the age of globalization, from Marxist point of view, I can say that women are now considered as the commodity, as the body of a woman is now a medium to increase television rating point with erotic gesture. In concluding remarks, I would like to say that feminism is like a balloon which is pink in color. Some people are supplying air, but in reality, air leaks are also appearing. Similarly, we can measure some developments in social and political structures that indicate the success of feminist movements, and at the opposite, inability of the socio-political machineries was also overwhelming that exhibit the limitations of Indian feminist movements. Thank you.
Good evening everyone, I am Shreya Datta, student of South Calcutta Girls College Sociology Department. I will be presenting a joint paper penned with my Professor Pratap Kumar Ghorai and me, titled Stri Dharma, A Contemporary Perspective. With the changing phases of the Indian society from ancient to modern time, status of women had witnessed a steady shift. Newspapers have always written about the poor, helpless women and the wicked things they do. But it's hard to imagine the bitter despair how all these hundreds and thousands of women suffer and many disasters come out of it because Stri Dharma hasn't ever been saved just by making people sit at home and control their thoughts. The earliest association of women were ladies' gatherings attached to larger social reform organization. An early example of this type of association was the Bharat Mahila Parishad, inaugurated in 1904 as a part of National Social Conference, began in 1887. Speakers focused on the need for education being the foremost, followed by child marriage and the problems of widows and dowry. The most important women organization formed in this period was All India Women's Conference, which first met in January of 1927. These women rejected the English label feminist because it implied that they put women's rights before those of the nation and witnessed men as the enemy. They defined their enemy as custom, which they saw as the result of war, invention and imperialism. Now the question is, from what kind of tradition and customary law did these women wanted freedom from? The answer to this is that of Stri Dharma, that they were expected to follow, which was nothing but an illusionary form of blind devotion and love for the marriage, which resulted in nothing but pain and suffering. In fact, what does Stri Dharma really mean? Best example can be cited out from the works of Tarabai Shinde's article on Stri Purush Tulana, where she raises question on what does Stri Dharma really mean. Does it always mean always obeying on orders from your husband and doing everything he wants? He can kick you, swear at you, keep his wars, get drunk, gamble with dice, steal, compete, murder, be treacherous and slander people, rob people's treasury, or squeeze them for bribe. He can do all this, but when he comes home, Stri Dharma means women are meant to think, oh, who is this coming but our little Lord Krishna, who just stolen the milkmaid's curd and milk and tried to blame Chandravali for it, and then smile at him and offer their devotion, stand ready at his service as if he was Paramatma himself. But how can people go on believing this idea of Stri Dharma once they have begun to think about what's good and bad? They have changed their ideas straight away, wouldn't they? A man can run off with someone else's wife, but that's not against the rule of Pativrata. In fact, there are thousands of reasons for breaking the rule. You are supposed to worship your husband as if he was a god. Now, who on earth really follows the Shastras to the letter and expect anyone else to? If the husband is really to be like a god to the wife, then shouldn't he behave like one, and wives are meant to worship them like true devotees? Shouldn't husbands have a tender love for them in return and care about their joys and pains like a real god would? A historical landmark in the social legislation of 19th century British India was the Age of Consent Act, the culmination of long-drawn debates on restitution of conjugal rights, divorce, child marriage of the 1880s. Rukmabai episode of 1887 made it imperative at last to rewrite this narrative of love and pleasure in the language of force. Rukmabai's action violently foregrounded the sexual double standards and make a mockery of the notion of the loving heart of the Hindu conjugality. Interestingly, the episode had shown up another fault in the image of the Hindu community. Rukmabai belonged to a carpenter caste where divorce had been customary. Now the question was, whose custom must colonial law recognize now? The controversy over the right age of consent continued to hinge on eugenics, morality, child-rearing and family interest. In 1890, Fulmoni, a girl of 10 or 12, was raped to death by husband Hori Maiti, a man of 35, under existing penal code provision. However, he was not guilty of rape since Fulmoni had been well within the statutory age limit of 10. The event, however, added enormous weight and urgency to Malabar's campaign for raising the age of consent from 10 to 12. The new legislation was conceived after the reformist agitation had convinced the authority that the great majority was ready for change. By 1934, the All India Women Conference had passed a resolution demanding a Hindu code that would modify the laws. In January 1944, the All India Women Conference supported the restitution of a Rao committee to prepare a Hindu code. In the final analysis, the Hindu code did not become law until after India gained its independence after 1947. Forbes further pointed out that if Skinner and other Western writers should have worked more closely, they would have seen that behind the curtain there were caged tigers, not slaves, and they became feminists. There is a wide gap between the legislative provisions of Hindu Marriage Act and societal value system and attitudes towards marriage in Indian society. Societal norms are powerful and often override the legal provision. This is a reflection of the social stigma for patriarchal attitude towards women. Concerted efforts are needed to bridge the gap between the legislative provisions of Hindu Marriage Act and the societal value system and attitudes towards marriage. Improvement in moral and religious values will overcome to extent the negative attitude and patriarchal mindset towards married women. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I am Sujata Pradhan, Assistant Teacher at Belgachi Hindi High School. The title of my topic is Domestic Violence in Tea Garden Areas and its Adverse Impact. Through my paper, I have tried to bring forth the reasons and the adverse impact of domestic violence on women, especially on children. Through interview with women in different tea gardens, I have tried to bring forth their problems which need immediate and proper attention in order to build a peaceful and harmonious society. Violence in any form is immoral and illegal. Domestic violence exists in all sections of our society, though we abstain from even talking about it. The people in the tea garden areas of North Bengal face acute socio-economic crisis due to poor living condition and low wages. Though the women folk form about 70% of the workforce, the society remains male-dominated. The women folk of the tea garden in North Bengal face violence of different kinds, chief among which is domestic violence. The scarred faces of these women are a witness to the violence which they try to keep within closed doors. Domestic violence has an adverse impact on the woman's already poor health. Most women are anemic and suffer from diseases of some kind or the other. It can be due to malnutrition or intake of tobacco and alcohol. Domestic violence affects these women socially, mentally, and physically. Along with the women, the children too have to suffer. The effect of violence on children is said to be life-threatening. It leaves them with a sense of vulnerability and hopelessness. It often results in psychological disorders and emotional disability. Children can exhibit aggressive behavior or become introvert in later life. It affects their learning ability as well. There are very few children who are able to lead a normal and positive life after facing domestic violence at home. Human trafficking is on a rise in tea garden areas. The women who face domestic violence at home become easy prey to the so-called agents who lure them with better life and jobs in unknown cities. These women are sold as domestic helps, some are forced to get married, and some are even sold as sex workers. Within or without home, these women are left to face uncertain and terrible future. The possible causes could be poverty, alcoholism, large family, and lack of awareness among these people. However, there are few tea gardens which have reported lesser number of domestic violence in recent times. It can be due to the spread of education and awareness, and also the spread of Christianity. The nature-fearing Adivasi and tribal people of the tea garden areas have turned into God-fearing people, perhaps for the establishment of a better society. Nevertheless, this issue needs to be addressed by the government with the help of local panchayat, the women association, NGOs and schools. Awareness needs to be spread about the ill effects of domestic violence on the society. Better standards of living and job opportunities can pave a brighter future for the people of this section of our society. Thank you.
Good evening, my respected teachers. I am Shruti Bhagat from South Calcutta Girls College and I am studying Sociology Honours. Today I will be presenting upon my topic, how society is influencing law to interfere in person's conjugal life. Firstly, before starting the topic, I would like to say a few lines upon the conjugal life. So conjugal life is basically the relationship between the husband and the wife. The topic opens up with how society and law enact together and interfere in conjugal life. How society influences law and shapes a conjugal life. As we all know, marriage is an universal institution present in all types of societies. We have often seen in the Hindus, the marriage is seen as a sacred concept. In society, a marriage is viewed through various emotions and perspectives. In fact, marriage is reared by a culture. It is an institution that is historically built with restrictions from age to gender to social status. Various restrictions are placed on marriages by communities, religious institutions, legal traditions, and states. A right and obligations a marriage is entitled to, wherein it takes place an oath to remain faithful and committed to one another for the rest of the life. It plays an active role in controlling shaping a conjugal life. It includes the age of marriage, spouse control, general restrictions, social restrictions, polygamy, and separations. We have often seen before any divorce case is filed, the law provides the couple with a 6 months time period to hold the sacred concept. One of the most appropriate example of how law interference in a conjugal life was the movie Thappar, where the lady who protests for her self-respect is being asked to compromise repeatedly by the law and society. The law firstly asks her to resolve the problems with her husband rather than providing her with justice. So, marriage is an institution which deals with numerous obligations and interference. My main motive was to highlight these interventions and bring it in light. Thank you.
Good morning, all the respected teacher and audience present here. My name is Bithi Maiti and I want to join a paper with Shalini Maiti and Sritilekha Das. We are all the students of South Calcutta Girls College, Department of Sociology. আমার আজকের উপস্থাপনার বিষয়টি হচ্ছে কন্যা ভ্রূণ হত্যা ও বাল্যবিবাহ সম্পর্কিত একটি পর্যায়ক্রমিক সমাজতাত্ত্বিক পর্যালোচনা। লিঙ্গ অনুপাতে বর্তমানে ভারতবর্ষের সামাজিক অবস্থা অত্যন্ত ভয়াবহ। গত কয়েক বছরে নারীদের লিঙ্গ অনুপাত অনেকাংশেই হ্রাস পেয়েছে বা পতন ঘটেছে। 2011 সালের জনগণনা অনুযায়ী 1 থেকে 6 বছর বয়সী ছেলে মেয়েদের মধ্যে 1000 জন ছেলে প্রতি মেয়েদের সংখ্যা ছিল 927 জন। এই চিত্ররূপটি জাতীয় স্তরে পরিকল্পনাকারীদের চিন্তার পারদ অনেকাংশেই বৃদ্ধি করেছে বা বৃদ্ধি ঘটিয়েছে। ভারতবর্ষের বিভিন্ন রাজ্যে বর্তমানে কন্যা শিশু ভ্রূণ হত্যা বা কন্যা শিশু লোপাটের সংখ্যাও ক্রমশ বৃদ্ধি পাচ্ছে। এর অন্যতম ও প্রধান কারণ হলো কন্যা সন্তানদের প্রতি অবজ্ঞা, অনুরূপভাবে পুত্র সন্তানদের প্রতি স্নেহশীল ও যত্নশীল মনোভাব। এই পিতৃতান্ত্রিক সমাজ ব্যবস্থায় বা পুরুষ শাসিত সমাজ ব্যবস্থায় কন্যা সন্তানকে পরিবারের বোঝা স্বরূপ গণ্য করা হয়, আর এই কারণেই একজন বিবাহযোগ্য কন্যাকে অধিক দানের বা অধিক পণের বিনিময় পাত্রস্থ করা হয়। অপরদিকে একজন পুত্র সন্তানকে মনে করা হয় বংশের প্রদীপ ও আয়কারী। এই কারণে কন্যা সন্তানদের প্রতি পর্বতসম অবজ্ঞার এবং পুত্র সন্তানদের প্রতি স্নেহশীল মনোভাব, এর ফলে সৃষ্টি হচ্ছে এই কন্যা ভ্রূণ হত্যা নামক এক অমানবিক প্রথার। জাতি ধর্ম নির্বিশেষে ভারতীয় সমাজ ব্যবস্থায় প্রত্যেকটি মানুষের মধ্যেই দেখা যাচ্ছে যে পুত্র সন্তান লাভের আকাঙ্ক্ষা অব্যাহত রয়েছে। 1975 সালে ইউএসজির মাধ্যমে অর্থাৎ আল্ট্রাসোনোগ্রাফির মাধ্যমে কিছু অসাধু ডাক্তারদের হাত ধরেই প্রথম আমাদের কাছে উঠে আসে প্রাক জন্ম লিঙ্গ নির্ধারণ বিষয়টি, কিন্তু আমাদের সরকার 1994 সালে সেক্স প্রভিনশন অ্যাক্টের মাধ্যমে এই আইনটি প্রণয়ন করে, যাতে কোনো শিশুরই পাক জন্ম লিঙ্গ নির্ধারণ করা সম্ভব নয় যায়। 1996 সালে প্রথম এই আইনটি বলবৎ করা হয় এবং এই আইনে বলা হয়, যদি কোনো চিকিৎসক বা চিকিৎসালয় এই ধরনের কোনো অপরাধমূলক কাজকর্ম করা হয়, তবে সেই চিকিৎসালয়ের যে স্বীকৃতি সেটিকেও যেমন হরণ করা হবে, সেরকম সেই চিকিৎসালয়ের চিকিৎসক এবং তার সহকর্মীদেরও বিরুদ্ধে যথাযথ ব্যবস্থা নেওয়া হবে। 2011 সালের জনগণনায় যে চিত্ররূপটি আমাদের সামনে উঠে এসছে, তা কিন্তু প্রধানমন্ত্রীরও চোখ এড়াতে পারেনি। আমাদের বর্তমান প্রধানমন্ত্রী নরেন্দ্র মোদী 2011 সালে এই চিত্ররূপটির পরিপ্রেক্ষিতেই হরিয়ানার একটি ঐতিহাসিক স্থান পানিপত নামক জায়গায় বেটি পড়াও বেটি বাঁচাও নামে একটি প্রকল্প চালু করেন, সেভ দ্য ডটার এডুকেটেড দ্য ডটার। এছাড়াও আমাদের পশ্চিমবঙ্গের মাননীয় মুখ্যমন্ত্রী মমতা ব্যানার্জি কন্যাশ্রী প্রকল্প চালু করেন, যার দ্বারা নারী কল্যাণ ও নারী শিক্ষার অধিকার শুরু হয় এবং এই প্রকল্পটি 67টি দেশের 237টি প্রকল্পের মধ্যে একটি অন্যতম প্রকল্প হিসেবে স্থান করে নিয়েছে। এছাড়াও 2012 সালে পক্সো আইনের মাধ্যমে শিশুদের ওপর যে যৌন নির্যাতন করা হয়, তার যে শাস্তিমূলক ব্যবস্থা দরকার, সেই রকমের একটি আইন প্রণয়ন করা হয়। বর্তমানে অনেক স্বেচ্ছাসেবী সংস্থা বিভিন্ন ধরনের শিবিরের আয়োজন করছে, যার মাধ্যমে বোঝানো হচ্ছে যে কন্যা ভ্রূণ হত্যা বা কন্যা শিশুদের ওপর যে যৌন নির্যাতন চলছে, এটি সমাজের কত বড় একটা অমানবিক দিক, যার ফলে সমাজের ভারসাম্য নষ্ট হয়ে যাচ্ছে। এই শিবির আয়োজন করার মাধ্যমে স্বেচ্ছাসেবী সংগঠনগুলি সর্বদাই আমাদেরকে সচেতন করতে চাইছে এবং এই অমানবিক কাজকর্ম থেকে বেরিয়ে আসার জন্য উদ্যোগ নিচ্ছে, যাতে আমাদের সমাজের ভারসাম্যও রক্ষা হয় এবং আমরা একটা সুস্থ সামাজিক পরিবেশের মধ্যে বেড়ে উঠতে পারি। কন্যা ভ্রূণ হত্যা যেমন একটি সামাজিক ও অমানবিক অপরাধ, সেরকম ভাবে আরেকটি সামাজিক ও অমানবিক অপরাধ হচ্ছে বাল্যবিবাহ, যেটির দ্বারা একটি শিশুকে অনেক ছোট বয়সেই আবদ্ধ করে ফেলা হয় সংসার জীবনে, যার ফলে তার নষ্ট হয়ে যায় শিশু মন ও শৈশব। না ঘটে তার শারীরিক বিকাশ, না ঘটে তার মানসিক বিকাশ, না ঘটে তার শিক্ষার বিকাশ। এই সমস্ত কিছু বিকাশ বাধাপ্রাপ্ত হওয়ার ফলেই একজন শিশু পরিপূর্ণ নারীতে পরিণত হতে পারে না। ফলে এই পিতৃতান্ত্রিক সমাজ ব্যবস্থায় সে সর্বদাই অবহেলিত, অবাঞ্ছিত হতে থাকে। সুতরাং সমস্ত কিছুর পরিপ্রেক্ষিতেই এক কথায় বলা চলে, এই পিতৃতান্ত্রিক সমাজ ব্যবস্থায় দাঁড়িয়ে নারীদের যদি যোগ্য সম্মানটুকু পেতে হয়, তবে তাদেরকে সর্বপ্রথম আত্মনির্ভর হতে হবে ও জ্ঞানের আলোয় আলোকিত হতে হবে, যাতে তারা এই সমাজে দাঁড়িয়েই নিজেদের যোগ্য সম্মানটুকু এই সমাজ থেকেই আদায় করে নিতে পারে। তারা সমাজে মাথা উঁচু করে বলতে পারে, আমি একজন নারী। এই প্রত্যেকটি কথার মাধ্যমেই বোঝা যাচ্ছে যে আজকে সমাজে নারীরা এখনো কতটা অবহেলিত, কতটা অবাঞ্ছিত। সুতরাং সর্বপ্রথম এই সমস্ত কিছুর থেকে মুক্তি পেতে হলে বলা চলে, এই সমস্ত পিতৃতান্ত্রিক সমাজ ব্যবস্থা, এই সমস্ত কিছু অমানবিক প্রথা থেকে মুক্তি পেতে হলে সর্বপ্রথম নারীদেরকে আত্মনির্ভর ও জ্ঞানের আলোয় আলোকিত হতে হবে। ধন্যবাদ।